Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be a critical point to understand as the environment's changing. So today I want to talk about what happens when you convert an Airbnb that was a short-term rental to a long-term rental. And the reason this is important, something I want to talk about, is you've all probably seen a lot of the headlines about how the Airbnb market is maybe saturated or people are just not staying in them as much. And for whatever reason, I'm not really here to talk about why Airbnbs are changing or where the trends are. I'm really here to talk about the tax effect of those trends. But I want to talk about what happens when you convert to now a long-term rental. So if you want to know more about how Airbnbs are taxed in general, I just did a video going through all of that. This is only going to cover converting to a long-term rental. So let's dive right in. Generally speaking, Airbnbs are exempted from the typical passive loss rules, meaning that most of the time you can actually offset losses from your Airbnb. So if you have a lot of expenses for furnishing, you have cleaning, you have all these items, and if you're taking depreciation deductions, maybe you even do a cost segregation study, which I've talked about in other videos. So you generate a tax loss. You can use that to offset other income. So if you have a full-time job and you just have a couple Airbnbs on the side, you can offset the wages from your full-time job, which was a really neat trick that long-term rentals generally don't provide. So that was one really awesome loophole that Airbnbs provided. However, if it's starting to dry up for you, you're not getting really the rentals that you thought, maybe the rates are a little lower with all the competition. And so now you're thinking, okay, well, I don't want to sell the property. I still think it's a good property. It's in a good location. Maybe even have a really low rate on it, making it even harder to sell. So you decide, okay, I'm going to give a long-term rental a try. So you convert it and now you go from renting it from 7 days or less. And now you're going to do a long-term lease and say you lease it out for 6 months or a year to someone. Well, now you have crossed over into what is defined as a rental activity for the passive loss rules. And so now you no longer are able to offset active income if it's considered passive. So this means that unless you have other passive income from another source, if that long-term rental is generating a taxable loss, then you won't be able to deduct it against, say, your full-time job or other income. Of course, if you're a real estate professional, this is different. It's not going to apply to you. But a lot of the people I know are just passive investors in Airbnb. They just have a few and they're doing something else full-time. So it's really important to know that this is what's going to happen when you make that conversion, even more so because typically the whole point of doing the Airbnb was that you would get a bigger return because your rental stays, you were charging more per night than what a long-term stay would average. So just based on that, it's more possible that you could have a tax loss after depreciation. So keep that in mind as you determine whether you're going to convert your Airbnb to a long-term rental or sell it or do something else. And I'll see you guys next time.